For 7 years, he served on the Ann Arbor Human Rights Commission and chaired the subcommittee on police oversight. Dwight is a retired educator and, for 41 years, served as headmaster of Friends School in Detroit and dean at Oakwood Friends School and Moorestown Friends School. He is the only person of color to have served as General Secretary of Friends General Conference, former clerk of Earlham School of Religion, and trustee with Friends World College, Haverford College, Wilmington College, Medford Lee's Retirement Center, Quakers Friends School, and Pendle Hill. Dwight has also served on the National Board of the American Friends Service Committee. His other life work includes the publishing of historical fiction, including The Kidnapped, a collection of stories, and 6 books in the series Essie Was My Mother. His latest work, Modern Psalms in Search of Peace and Justice, is inspired by his Quaker faith and a lifetime of social activism. Father of 4 sons and grandfather to 2 grandsons and 2 granddaughters. Dwight lives in Ann Arbor with his wife, Diane, an attorney.
And this is Christine, just coming in from the podium, running tech, and hoping that Dwight, you can say a word or two just to say hello so we know that your mics are working.
The mics are working, but I can't see you.
All right, we can see you.
That's
Just
funny.
so you know, we can see you. Thank you.
So now we are going to hear from our distinguished guests. Eduardo and Dwight will speak for 20 minutes, and I will start with a question. What is the function of police?
You want to go first, Dwight?
That's a very interesting question. I write historical fiction from the period 1795 to the Civil War, which are where the roots of the police are, where there was great fear that there was either going to be slaves escaping or a rebellion by the slaves. The function of the police is to do what those who are in control want them to do. That's worldwide. The police are sitting in the middle, and they often receive the blame for what the power structure wants them to do.
My response is that the function of the police is different in different communities, and I have an idealized function for the police, and that's to be a guardian of the citizenry. But again, as Dwight has mentioned, history is full of examples of policing that comes under political control and sometimes, serves unjust laws. But modern policing, most people think of it starting in around 1829 in Britain, and when the bobbies were put together by Sir Robert Peel. And the idea back then was to have citizens that serve a function, that are paid to serve a function of providing a service that every citizen should provide, but these people have been authorized to specialize in the idea of guardian of the communities and people. And as the original bobbies didn't carry guns. Boy, that has changed quite a bit. But policing is quite different in different countries. And I think today we're going to be focusing on US stuff. But the idealized policing is one where you have citizens that are doing a task that they are asked to do that task by the citizenry, and the task is to help provide security and to guard the citizenry from people that are breaking the laws. But as you know, laws are sometimes just and sometimes unjust, and the policing can get pretty complicated.
But with my reading of policing, I see the roots coming from patrollers and also from those who were in the militia.
Yeah.
And not from England, not in the United States. The bobbies that you are referred to were in 1829, but there was
Right.
policing going on
Before
of
that.
the slaves,
Sure.
actually before the Revolutionary War. And if you read history, you see numerous reports of the concerns during the Revolutionary War and even before that there was going to be slaves who were dangerous and they might rebel. And sometimes they did rebel and they were being policed. The word was not used, but they were being policed. And they were being policed by people who were armed.
Yeah, I think again, if we look at a historical perspective, again, different countries policing emerges in different ways. My interest right now is to try to figure out how to encourage citizens to get involved with policing in their communities, because it's only by citizen involvement that there can be oversight of the kind of work that we want police to do. And police shouldn't be doing the work of that politicians want them to work. They should be working for the citizens. They should be listening to the way communities want to be policed, rather than to, wearing a uniform with a bunch of stars on them or badges or whatever, and being overly aggressive in arresting people, because it's easy to arrest some people. It's a lot easier to arrest some people than to arrest other people. And unfortunately, our jails are full of people that don't really need to be there.
I unite with everything that you said.
Great. Those are great responses. Thank you. The next query that I wanted to throw out is, how necessary is it for the community to participate in oversight of law enforcement?
Oh boy, I think it's essential. When I was in graduate school, I didn't ever imagine that I would end up working in the field of civilian oversight of law enforcement. I kind of came into it by accident, but it happened to fit in with my desire for social justice that was very much influenced by my Quaker upbringing. And I worked for Miami-Dade County for 29 and a half years, and 13 of those years was operating the county's independent review panel, which dealt with citizen complaints of the police. And boy, did I learn a lot during that period, and learn how the courts function, learn how the police function, and learned how all the systems, juvenile justice, the whole shebang. It was a real eye opener. And the bottom line is that there's a lot of injustice in our so-called justice system, and the only way that that can be addressed appropriately is by people pointing that out and not turning away from it.
I agree, and that we need checks and balances to make our system work. If if the police are policing themselves, then there is no check. The same thing is true. I spent a number of years as a head of a school and 10 more years as a dean of a school. It's important that people be held accountable for what they do, and you can't only self-discipline. Unfortunately, a lot of people in the community are afraid to do oversight because they think that there will be retribution if they make a decision or they even make a suggestion against behavior that they question. that stops a lot of people from even coming out and discussing the issue. They'll talk to me privately, but they won't come to any public meeting, and certainly not one that's going to have a television camera on. It's very unfortunate. My whole concern is for public safety.
Yeah, I think part of our problem is that a lot of people think that the people responsible for public safety are the people wearing uniforms, and that's not my perspective. I think all of us have a responsibility to participate in public safety, and I know it's hard. And yes, if you confront injustice, you often meet retribution, or it's not always safe. That's the truth of the matter. And I won't go into any war stories, but I can tell you from my experience that yeah, there's I served for 13 years as the executive director of the independent review panel. And as soon as the police director became mayor of the county, he eliminated the office. And so power does need to be addressed. And there's what I can say honestly is that doing nothing is the worst thing we can do.
This is the truth. This is the truth. I never intended to get involved in police oversight to the extent that I did. Black Lives Matter and an organization called Ann Arbor to Ferguson came to us, the Human Rights Commission, and demanded that we do something about the fact that there was no police oversight after a 40-year-old Black woman was killed by two policemen breaking into her house, responding to a call. And the prosecuting attorney decided not to do anything. I thought it was a 4-month assignment. I've been at it for 4.5 years now, and it's like the never-ending story. I have a number of people who are close to me who are policemen, including 2 of my nephews. One of my best friends is a detective in New York City. I've got a couple of relatives who also work in the police department, but not in uniform. I have a major concern for helping people and not, what shall I say, demonizing people.
Right.
As a Quaker, as I've often said, and some of my activist friends get bothered by it, but it's the truth. I don't see anybody as an enemy. The worst that you can be, in my eyesight, is a misled sibling. That's it. So how do we make it work?
Yeah. Well, I agree with Dwight. We shouldn't be demonizing people that are they have a job to do, and it's not an easy job. If you're going to seriously get involved in oversight of policing, you need to get in their shoes a bit, and you need to listen to a lot of people in a lot of different situations. And I know when I did some ride-alongs, it unveiled me to a good extent because we have to remember that these people that wear the uniform, and are paid to do a certain job, oftentimes they have. Sometimes they fear their own organizations more than they do the citizens that they're interacting with. And if you do ride-alongs, don't just go to the regular old beat cop situation. Also go into the tactical event type of situations where they do what some of the community members call the work of the jump out boys, where they and different communities have different names for these special supposedly crime suppression stops. But as you all probably know, It's a lot easier to arrest a lot of people if you go to the poorest neighborhoods. And you can fill up jails quite easily. And unfortunately, some of the police get rewarded when they arrest people rather than when they serve the community.
This is true. And here, at least in Ann Arbor, anybody who wants to do a ride along is invited to do one. And you can do it either with the police department or with the sheriff's office. And the sheriff is in another town, but close enough that you can easily go there. You're right that it's very eye-opening. And it's really, I hesitate whenever I hear the phrase, put yourself in somebody else's shoes. As I try to tell people when I look at racism, if you put yourself in my shoes, then you're a Black person when you're in the shower, when you're sleeping. I can't get out of the shoes. So a few minutes worth of riding along with me or pretending that you are me is a joke. It's insulting, frankly. We can't understand wholly what another person, any person is going through, but we have the obligation to at least make the attempt and to show empathy.
Yeah, I'm with
whoever
you.
that is. And that includes the police department. And too often, as you say, it's easier to arrest some people than it is to arrest others. Jesus even talked about how somebody comes into worship and that person is well dressed and you invite them to the front. Somebody else who is not dressed so well, you want them to be in the back. As a matter of fact, you don't even want them inside.
Yeah.
And so when the police show a prejudice against somebody who appears to be, whether she or he is or not, from the lower rungs of society, and favoritism toward those who appear to be in pinstripe suits and sitting on boards, et cetera, that is not justice.
Right. No, I'm
Well,
with you.
thank you so much, friends, for sharing that. We have a couple of minutes left before we move on to the Q&A. So I think Jose has another question that he has before we move on to question and answers from people on joining us.
Yes, the last question that I had, and that was really good discussion, and we can continue that, is how does the militarization of law enforcement affect communities of color?
I can certainly say that any militarization is going to impact communities of color more than other communities because they're going to be utilized in those communities. You know, you don't see a lot of armored vehicles driving through white neighborhoods. I don't think I've ever seen that.
No.
Yeah, so it's, and I think police departments that rely on show of force to try to control crime, I think they're missing the boat because they're doing what they think their job is. They're doing what what maybe their bosses are telling them to do. But having, military vehicles and armaments visible to the community, that does not increase the sense of safety on the part of the people that are living there. And remember that I suggested that our police should be guardians of the people, not agents of power and government authority. Which is unfortunately what most people think of them as being. And getting back to the issue of, I want to make sure that people understand that racism exists in police departments and it exists in the communities. The people that put on a uniform already come with, lots of baggage. And but we also need to understand that people that put on that uniform and serve as first responders to, accidents and crimes and stuff like that, they get exposed to a subset of human behaviors that, that the college professor doesn't get exposed to. And that changes. Being exposed to trauma has psychological effects. And unfortunately, it's real easy for people to start exercising this us versus them thing that I think creates a big problem in what we need in policing, is because we start to compartmentalizing people, and part of it is due to racism, but part of it is also due to that we get exposed to different slices of the behavioral pie, and some of that can be traumatic.
The militarization that we are exposed to in America is a moving line. We become more and more accustomed to things that what shall I say? That we shouldn't be. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
I'll give you two examples of militarization. In 1841, you remember I write historical fiction. In 1841, in Cincinnati, the bully boys got cannons that they fired and used on blacks until they had no more cannonballs. Meanwhile, the sheriff and the marshal just stood by while it was happening. Fast forward to 1985. I'm from Southern Ohio. And incidentally, I lived in Detroit for 8 years before I moved here to Ann Arbor. Both my wife and I worked there, and now she works in Ann Arbor, and allegedly I have retired. So, and then in 1985, I had a house in 1985 that was in the Philadelphia area. I was living in New Jersey because Quakers did not pay me enough money to live in Philadelphia. When MOVE was bombed by the mayor. That's militarization.
Yeah.
It is being expanded right now, even as we speak. And as Eduardo said, we're not making things more safe by doing this. We are looking more inwardly for trouble than we are outwardly. That's because we don't have justice in our society. That's why we have so many policemen, and that's why it's very few police departments that say that they don't need more cops.
Yeah.
But most people will say they don't. Anyway.
Thank you so much, friends, for sharing. I think we're going to go ahead and move on to our Q&A of the night. So I think Christine's going to help us facilitate here by reading some of the questions. So if you have a question right now, you can just go down at the bottom of your screen and click on the chat feature, and you will see a space where you can type in your question, and Christine will be reading out some of those questions. And you can address them to Jose, Eduardo, or DeWaite. So, yep. So, Christine, are you ready?
Yeah. Keep those questions coming, friends. The first question is coming from John in Oakland, California. And the question is for both Eduardo and Dwight. Would you please talk about your experiences with seeking to reduce the scope of policing? So police are not addressing mental illness, homelessness, school discipline, drug use, disaster response, etc.
Before you can start answering, I just want to, let's try to keep it to a minute to an answer so we can get as many questions answered as possible.
Good luck. Dwight, you want to go first? You might be more disciplined at sticking to it.
Well, we do stick the police in a very difficult position when we're looking at people who have mental illnesses. And who is taking care of them on the street? Is the police who are the first ones who have to confront them, and they need to have training in dealing with people with mental illnesses. The woman who I referred to, Ora Rosser, who was killed by the police, they knew had a mental illness when they came to her house. They've been there many times. So how do you prepare for such a situation? I'll stop there since we're supposed to do a minute. So your turn.
Well, I think training, and policing has changed quite a bit since I first started getting involved with them in the early 1980s. The mental health issues are critical. But, police are being asked to do stuff that everybody should be doing and not just the police, part of the reason police and our jails are dealing constantly with mentally ill folks is because other institutions and other entities aren't doing that. And so it's the first responders that get stuck with a job, and not because they're asked for it. It's because nobody else was doing it, and they were required to do it. So I feel quite a bit, but they need more training. And there's such a difference in the amount of training that police departments get. Some of them get a lot, and some of them barely get 8 hours of how to deal with the mentally ill, and that's a disaster.
It is. It is. And one thing that we can do as members of the community is when you see the police handling a situation well, tell them that. Give them some strokes for what they're doing. My wife and I took a train into DC for a funeral. And while we were there was a mentally ill person who the police were working with, and they were being so tender and respectful to that woman that I had to tell them before we left that they were doing a great job. Conversely, most of the time when I see police with mentally ill people, they're not as respectful to them. And it's almost as though they're looking down on these people, and a person is sick. As far as the drugs are concerned, people who are on drugs, obviously they need to have training there too. You said training. Yes.
Yeah.
That is that the panacea? I don't know. We should be treating people rather than putting them on the street who need the treatment.
Sure.
And I just wanted to add that this conversation goes back to your earlier point, Eduardo, about public safety. And it's not just about police. There are other individuals in the community, and we're all responsible for keeping the community to account. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And one thing I want to say about militarization before I forget it is, I think we need to start at changing the uniforms of police officers and taking those stars off of the lapels. Okay. They are not supposed to be in an army. Okay. They are not. They are that, we should begin to dissociate the militarism thing, not just with what's coming from the Pentagon. We need to deal, why do they wear, lapel insignias of how many combat units they were in when they served in the military? Shouldn't be a criteria for becoming a police officer, and it isn't. Unfortunately, most of the police departments of this community begin the militarization by putting insignia on their on their uniforms that project a military presence when that's not what needs to happen.
Well said. And we're going to try to take some more questions as well.
Christine, are you ready for us with the question?
Hi, we're still getting people coming on to ask some questions. So I encourage you all to use that chat button at the bottom of your screen to go ahead and write down your questions. And I know that we have a couple more that have come from Jose and Sergio, so maybe we'll go back to you all.
Yeah, so as you guys were talking earlier, how has your faith, you touched a little bit, but let's go maybe more in depth. How has your faith influenced this kind of work that you're doing of civic oversight?
Everything I do is tied together. I hold babies on Monday morning on the cardiac ward. And I've been doing that for 7.5 years. I've been doing this work on police oversight for 4.5 years. I deliver for Meals on Wheels. It's all a single piece. I've been doing that for 8 years. It's all a single piece. So how have I been influenced by this? I sit at the top of a family where on one side, I'm the genealogist, I am the elder. There are 4,500 people on that family tree. My faith tells me that I have to be protective of all of them. And when I say all of them, that means those who are, in quote, civilian, those who are also policemen. That's a part of my faith. So how can I protect all of them at the same time? The only way you can do it is with love, which of course is a curse word in the 21st century.
My faith is what's gotten me into all this stuff. You know, when I trained as a psychologist, and you know, I went to that school down south, Dwight. I went to Ohio State and finished that our doctorate in '79, and I had no idea that God was going to ask me to get involved in criminal justice. I started working for Miami-Dade County as a family therapist. And then I got put in a responsible position. I got the opportunity to run the county's crime prevention programs. I asked my wife, I said, you know, this is not what my trajectory for my profession I thought was going to be. But, you know, I prayed about it. And I was kind of directed in that area by a leading that I could have a greater impact if I address needs of the community than if I address needs of individuals and families. So I took that job. And then after 12 years of doing that job, the opening occurred in the independent review panel. Now, who in their right mind would want to put themselves in the middle of conflict between the police and the citizenry? Okay, a Quaker probably can take it. A Quaker probably, like Dwight said, I don't focus on enemies. I focus on trying to prevent conflict and so I felt the leading to take this position. And for 13 years, I got shot at by the cops, and I got shot at by the citizenry sometimes, because everybody wants to win. And what I told them is I was working for the greater good of the community, and I didn't work for the county manager, and I didn't work for the chief judge who appointed me. And I lasted for 13 and a half years. But my faith, you know, why do I do what I do? Is because I follow leadings.
Yes.
In the quiet manner of friends.
Sometimes not so quiet.
Speaking truth to power, you have to sometimes get loud.
Yeah.
Even if you don't want to, you have to.
Well, if not loud, persistent.
Persistent. And sometimes I cannot tell you when I'm going to go off, but I see myself do it sometimes.
Yeah.
It's thoroughly frustrating, because I break up the word that most people speak as community as in common unity.
Mm.
That's what I'm looking for. And when I try to get the mayor, the police chiefs, the city administrator to define common unity, they have a very difficult time doing it. How do we pool all of our concerns together to work for the best for all of us? You don't look for what is best for me as an individual, or I say I divide person. You look for what is best for the whole. And that's a hard thing for you to do, but that's the responsibility if you're a person of faith.
I want to add at this point in time that there's another Quaker that's also involved at the national level on civilian oversight of law enforcement. The current president of the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement is Brian Corr from Massachusetts, I think from Cambridge meeting. And so there's plenty of people of faith that are engaged in civilian oversight.
And there were 66 people from just our meeting who were supportive to me when I was working on the Human Rights Commission.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. I have a question. What, in your view and in your experience, is the role or the importance of implicit bias training in policing?
Is absolutely necessary. The biases that we all carry in a racist society are so hidden that sometimes even if you're a person of color, you can catch yourself saying, wow, why did I suspect that person? Because that person was somebody who did not look like the dominant society person, blonde hair, white. We are suspects wherever we go if we're a person of color. But not only we are suspects by the majority, we are often suspects by our own people. So all of us need to have anti-bias training and deep anti-bias training. And Eduardo said that, you know, sometimes the police department will say, well, we had 8 hours worth of training. That's 8 hours worth of training in a year. And you may not even have to have that training the next year. You might have to have it for 4 or 5 years. It takes, I've been running racism workshops since 1969. It takes a whole lot more training than 8 hours a year or 8 hours every 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, it goes without saying. I think everybody should be exposed to that training, and not just police officers. I think everybody should be exposed to that training.
So
Well-
at this point, are we thinking about bringing up anything from the 1033 program?
Yeah, so I think that Jose, I think some people have joined us since you explained it, but if you can just talk a little bit about what the Pentagon program what kind of program this is and what it does to local communities and what our current legislative ask is.
Yes. The 1033 program gets its name from the section of the 1997 National Defense Authorization Act, the Defense Policy Bill, where it was created in 1997. It essentially creates a pipeline of weapons and weapons, militarized equipment, and some innocuous equipment too, that goes from the Pentagon to all these different police departments across the country. And we first saw it used on a wide national scale in Ferguson when the protesters were taken to the streets, marching for Mike Brown, who was taken from us by a law enforcement detective in Ferguson, Missouri. And we saw the now iconic photo of the marcher putting his or her hands up and being confronted by law enforcement pointing fully automatic rifles at their person.
Yes.
And as some of you may know, in the military, you don't point at something you're not going to shoot at. So they were already breaking protocol and showing that they weren't trained in how to use that deadly militarized equipment. So the 1033 program creates a pipeline again from the Pentagon to 18,000 different law enforcement agencies, where they sometimes use it in communities, including tanks, fully automatic weapons, bazookas, grenade launchers, and you name it. If the military has it, they probably can get their hands on it, essentially free of charge. And we are working on the Stop Militarizing Law Enforcement Act, which would create reforms in this program so that the deadly equipment, the worst equipment, won't be going to law enforcement. But they can't say that they need it because the innocuous equipment like filing cabinets or microwaves, they can still get it. So that's the ask that we're asking folks to reach out to the members of Congress to support the Stop Militarizing Law Enforcement Act.
Thank you so much, Jose, for sharing that. And I just want to share quickly with viewers online that you can take a quick action right now on your computers if you just go to fcnl.org. And right now we're currently sharing on the screen our website. And at the top right corner, you will see action. And you can just click on there and then click on Act Online. And then you just scroll down. Just keep scrolling down and you will see Take Action. And the first action that you will see there is tell Congress to stop militarizing law enforcement. So right now, from your home, you can get on FCNL's website, follow those steps, and you can write to your member of Congress and ask them to either co-sponsor this legislation or support this legislation. So once you click on that link, it will pop a brief description of what Jose just shared, what the 1033 program is. And then you can click on that blue square and click where it says Act Now, and it will direct you to a page where you could fill out. So let's briefly do this together. So let's, so Christine, if you could just briefly type in your quick information. This is super easy that you could do is quickly tell your member of Congress that they should support this legislation that's currently introduced in the House, and then also urge your senators to introduce this in the Senate. So you quickly just just fill out this form by quickly just putting your name, your address, your email, and your phone number. As you can see, Christina is currently filling it out. It takes less than 2 minutes for you to do this.
Oh, gosh, look at that. If you have not already signed up to get weekly email updates from FCNL, you can check that box. And I'm going to say, FCNL, remember me, so I don't have to fill out all these boxes next time.
I think if you go up to the form, Christine, I think where it's in the prefix, I think that's where
Oh, my gosh, I have to put a title? This is
Yeah.
very interesting. Okay.
Mhm.
Yes. And then you just click next.
Okay, cool.
And then right here, you will see a message already drafted for your member of Congress. You can click on the box and put so first you get the top, you can put a subject line, and this will go directly to your member of Congress's email address, and you will receive a confirmation that they have received. But
So I'm going to do my own message subject. Is that okay?
I think that's perfect.
Okay. And then I'm looking at this message and I'm thinking, this looks a little, I don't know, homogenous. I guess I'm thinking, where's me in this? So what should I do?
Maybe you should introduce something personal, maybe something related to your faith or something that connects you personally to this issue. So you can edit on there and put in a personal story or something that connects you to the issue. So as easy as that is,
So,
Christine.
let's see, is anybody having questions or thoughts? I've got this share screen up right now. I'm going to take that off. And if you've got any questions on how to do that, please just let us know. And we do want to say, make sure that all of us who are on as panelists right now, please make sure we speak up and speak slowly. That includes Jose and Sergio.
Thank you. So as Christine's doing this and filling out this form, you can fill out this right now and ask your member of Congress to support this, but you can also stop by their office and leave a leave behind. After Christine is done filling out this message, we'll show you where you can access that on the website, and you can just print that out and go to your member of Congress's local office and stop by and just share with them your concern about this program and the lack of oversight.
For that personal touch.
All right. So just one sentence is good enough, right?
Yes.
Okay. How am I doing, Jose? What do you think? Did that work?
That looks great.
Okay. So now I should do a closing, right?
Right.
And I should definitely put my name. Cool. All right. And do these, I mean, do people read these? Like, this is a thing. If like all of us are doing this right now, our members of Congress are going to get 40 different emails.
That is
Well,
correct.
They do read it, and they will often bring them up during a staff meeting that happens weekly in most legislative offices. I know that in my office, it was read in it was brought up in meetings if it raised up in their profile of a lot of letters coming in. I used to work for Senator Menendez of New Jersey.
All right. So these letters have impact.
Yes, they do.
So just as easy as like that, you can take a quick action if you're concerned about this program. And now if we go back to the website, Christine, if you can go back to the FCNL website, we can show where you can access the leave behind, so you can stop by your member of Congress's district office, or you can also schedule a lobby visit and talk to your member of Congress about this issue.
Should I go back to action alerts or
I
what do you think?
I think you should go to FCNL.org.
Go to the front page?
Yes.
Okay.
If we
All
just
right,
type
let
in
me go back. All right, I'm back on the front page.
and if you just right on the top on the search button, if you just put 1033,
All right,
you will quickly see, if you scroll down in the second right there, co-sponsors, you will find a blog post about our current ask, which Jose just explained, and you can just download one of the asks. And once again, you can stop by your member of Congress's office and in their district. And now you maybe you're asking yourself, how do I find my member of Congress's office if I don't know where? Well, at FCNL, we have a cool tool. If you go to fcnl.org/Congress, Christine, do you think we can do that quickly?
yeah, you bet. Hang on for a moment, everybody. All right, let's go back. Front page?
And we just go fcnl.org/Congress.
Okay. That's easy.
Yeah. So if you're thinking right now and don't know who your member of Congress is or don't know where their office is, you can use this easy tool, just fcnl.org/Congress,
Mhm.
and you can just, direct you to this page. And here you will see this box where it says find your member of Congress. And all you have to do is just put in your zip code.
Okay.
So why don't we do my home zip code in New
Okay.
Mexico, 87506. And we click go. So here it'll give me all my elected officials in the House and the Senate. So we can click on
Should we go to-
Senator Udall. So here's the information about Senator Udall. And if we scroll down, we have all this information on what committees he's in. But at the bottom, we see his offices and where they're located. So I live in Santa Fe and I'm from Santa Fe. So I can see here that this is his address, and I can quickly just print out this leave behind. And as I'm going to the grocery store, just swing by his office and have a quick conversation with the staff and give him a leave behind about this issue, because I am concerned that there's no oversight on this program.
Cool. And if I go up on his side, I went to action alerts. So, wow.
And there you can just see different action alerts on the different issues, but you can also find, if you want to tell your friends to take action on this issue, you'll find the link as well on there.
Okay. I love it.
And we will be sending out an email tomorrow with all this information in case you missed it. I know we went quickly, really fast on this, but
Well, we have one more question since we were talking about writing letters. And this is from Rob, who says, does the system keep a record of each person's letters so they do not accidentally send duplicates?
I believe the system does.
Okay.
Yes. So if you click on it twice, don't worry. It will only send one time to your member of Congress.
All right.
Yeah. Jose, is there anything else you want to share before we the closing last minutes?
No, I think that was great. That's really awesome to see all the different functionality on the website to make getting involved and raising your voice and doing advocacy very, very easy.
Before we close up, we just want to give Eduardo and a brief opportunity to share about other local actions you can take and different local actions they have taken in their hometowns on this issue.
Well, I've consulted with a lot of groups in a lot of different cities and community, but part of the problem is we have 50 states with 50 different sets of laws. So you need to create something in your community that will fit under that particular state's legal structure. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Go to the NACOLE website, NACOLE.org, and there's some good training materials there. and can help you prevent some of the mistakes I made and some of the mistakes other folks have made. Yeah, every community is different. Miami-Dade County has 35 different police departments. So each of those communities needs to have a special, specially designed for their community oversight body.
I just want to add that we need to be willing to make ourselves uncomfortable. When it was clear that I was receiving a great deal of pushback from the police chief and also from the mayor, what I had to do in order to get police oversight was to reach out to the activists, not only Black Lives Matter and Ann Arbor to Ferguson, but also those that were in the university. And if it had not been for the young activists, straight up, if it hadn't been for them, it would not have happened. And we need to make alliances with people that normally we don't walk down the street with. And if we think that others are going to come and march in our demonstrations, yet we're not going to do it for them, then where's the reciprocity? And, I found some of my best friends in surprising places. So.
Well, thank you so much. I think we're running out of time. I just want to thank our speakers. Thank you so much for tuning in, and all our audience on Zoom as well as on Facebook Live. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on this conversation. If you weren't able to follow those steps on taking action, we will be sending a follow-up email tomorrow where you will have links included as well as a recording of this conversation. And why don't we just take a moment of silence and we'll close out. Thank you, friends. Thank you so much, and have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. We'll see
Be
you tonight.
well.